right now. You might not have, sell something that everyone in the world can buy, right? Actually, there's probably not many things that everyone in the world can buy.
Almost everything in our life that's juicy is based on status roles. And you're either high or you're low.
I'm talking about sort of campaigns and approaches that drive people to action, that give them the perception that they're seeing maybe behind the red velvet rope, or they're attracted to the thing that not everybody can have.
Okay, so this is a juicy topic that I've been waiting to talk about. It's the thing I've been spending an enormous amount of time on for the last few months. All good theater, all good movies, all good novels, almost everything in our life that's juicy is based on status roles. And you're either high or you're low. Shakespeare all the way to the Godfather. So let me act out the Godfather so you understand what I'm talking about. Opening scene, first movie. Can any of you visualize it? What's the very first thing that happens? The wedding, right? So the Godfather's daughter is getting married. In the Sicilian tradition, on your daughter's wedding day, you must grant a favor if someone asks you for a favor. Who has the highest status in the land? The Godfather. He has killed people to maintain his status. And in fact, his entire life works because he is perceived as having the highest status. He's sitting in his office. It's dark, oak paneled. The undertaker comes, 96-pound, Bonacera, little drip of a guy. Is there anything lower status than the drip of a guy who's the undertaker? No, it's like a parody. So the undertaker comes and he says to the Godfather, my daughter has been sexually abused, harassed, and the perpetrators went free. I want you to kill them. And then he has the temerity to say, I'll pay you. So now he's treating the Godfather like a hired thug. Status goes down. If Bonacera pulls it off, his status goes up. And you can feel the tension in the room. He's about to be killed because he's done this thing, taken advantage of the daughter's wedding day to do this thing that will forever mark the Godfather as a low-status person. And it's a very complicated 6-second edit. But what happens is, the next thing you know, Bonacera's on his knees, kissing the Godfather's ring and saying, will you do me this favor, my friend? And pledging his allegiance to the high-status Godfather. So normality is restored. And the rest of the movie is just that, up and down, over and over and over again. So once you see status roles, you can't unsee them. And all you got to do is visit Southern California, any car lot, what is the purpose of the front lawn? Why do we have front lawns? It turns out front lawns were invented in England in the 16 and 1700s as a way of saying to your neighbors, I don't need to graze sheep to raise a living. I can take sheep grazing land and waste it. Status, right? So exclusivity of almost any form is a chance for status. You saw the video before someone else saw the video. You have a Supreme shirt that sold out after 6 minutes. You got to fly in this part of the plane, not that part of the plane, even though the whole plane lands at the same time, right? And so status is true. We can't deny it's true. So as marketers who seek to make a difference, we are allowed to use, in fact, we are required to use status to cause people to take action.
But I say that in terms of information arbitrage between a buyer and a seller. In terms of how to create value, that's a different question. You know what I mean? Like how do I communicate value to a prospect? That's the entirety of persuasion and all that other stuff. But like in terms of like how do we pursue opportunities, which is a subject that I'm going to write a whole book about. But like opportunity itself, which is just like this big word that people like to throw around. But like, what is opportunity? How do you have a good opportunity versus bad opportunity? And so the number one YouTube video I have on my channel is I touch on the topic, but I see it as 3 variables. So you have the total number of potential units to sell, which some people call TAM, right? Total addressable market. But how many units of this widget could I potentially sell? Number one. Number two is what is the value to cost discrepancy? So how much profit can I potentially make solving this particular problem? And then number 3 is what are the competitive dynamics within that marketplace? So an example that has 2 of the 3 would be like what if I wanted to sell cell phone service? Lots of people need it. How much it costs me to add an additional customer is very, very low, so very high gross margins. But what are the competitive dynamics? Well, there's a lot of really entrenched players. It's very hard to get into that, right? And so when I'm looking at an opportunity, I want to see all three. Now, the difficulty with using those three is that equation can evolve over time. And so if you're starting a business right now, you might not have, sell something that everyone in the world can buy, right? Actually, there's probably not many things that everyone in the world can buy. I was talking to they sold Kangen water. It's like alkaline water. Yeah. And I was talking to them about their TAM, and they're like, everybody drinks water. I was like, yeah, but no one's buying a $2,000 water machine. So the TAM isn't everybody. It's people who are foo-foo enough to buy $2,000 water machines, which is a much smaller of the 7 billion people on Earth, where 80% of them don't have internet. I don't think your TAM is as big as you think it is, right? And so, but as you get into business, you learn more. And then you realize that you can expand your market in one way or another. And I could get into how the different ways you can expand your market, but
yeah, give us a little taste.
Yeah.
So the one thing I remember from maybe one of the things that you taught me was to think about the scalability of things. Yeah,
100%. And the scalability comes. There's the entrepreneur component, which is like skills, traits, beliefs, which we can hit on if you want. But then there's the scalability of the deliverable, which is like, how do I create a deliverable that is more scalable? If you think about my trajectory, I first got in shape, and I had a job, right? And then I started selling fitness services because that was a skill that I learned. And then I got other people to do fitness services for me. So this is all levels of leverage. So like opportunity is just a fancy word for leverage. And then after that, I sold licensing, which was with media, right? So my cost of incremental costs were basically zero, right? Every new customer was very low for me didn't cost me much to add them, right? Compared to how much money I could make from them. And so with the different business, the different iterations of fundamentally the same skill set, I knew how to get people in shape. That was the skill set, right? I added in learning how to market, learning how to sell, and those were things that added value, right? And that was when we get into the entrepreneur skills, traits, beliefs, like that was from that side, but that is why I was able to climb the opportunity ladder and gain more leverage on the opportunity that I was pursuing. And with regards to how do you increase your total addressable market, so there's 4 ways to increase it, there's 5 ways to adjust it. So the first 4 are the same, don't worry, the 5th one's just the last one. So you can go upmarket, which means you're selling to bigger versions of the same thing. So let's say I was helping hair salon owners. I could help people who have chains of hair salons, or I could help franchisors or licensors of hair salons. That'd be a much smaller demo, but they'd be much bigger clients. It'd be enterprise, right? I could go down market, which would be selling smaller versions, which would be like I could sell hairstylists, right? If I want to go down market from there, people who aspire to be hairstylists, right? So it's like a pyramid. So you go up market, you can go down market, you can go adjacent market, which is what's similar to hairstylists that probably has similar wants and needs. So it'd probably be like a lash salon or
nail salon or something.
Nail salon, yeah, exactly. So that would be an adjacent market. Or I could go broader. So broader is where you take all adjacent markets under one umbrella, which would be beauty, right? So it'd be like, I help all beauty type brick and mortar businesses, right? That would be going broader. And so those are the 4 ways you can increase the total addressable market of whatever thing that you're serving. The 5th is you can go narrower. So I say that you can increase it 4 ways. The 5th is you go narrower, you get more specific about the constraints that you apply to the requisites to become a customer. The reason that most times with businesses that I take on in the portfolio, it's actually the first step we do is we actually narrow it most times. And it's because they don't even know who they serve, and they don't know who they serve best. And so when you're starting out, one of the best practices you can do is the fancy word is a common factor analysis, but basically what do all the best clients we have in common? So if we take 100 clients and we look at the top 20%, because there's Pareto, they're probably responsible for 80% of the revenue anyways. We look at that 20%, we say, what do they all have in common? And then what if we only sold that amount of people and we sold now the same 100, but they were all of that 20%? Right. Well, we would 5x our revenue. Same operational drag because it's the same size company, but we're selling better customers. Yeah. And most people, I get on with entrepreneurs all the time, and they're like, "I think I've saturated my market." And I'm like, "All right, what's your revenue?" They're like, $2 million a year. I'm like, "Okay, well, the market you're serving is a $60 billion industry, and you are making $2 million a year.
A little room to grow.
Do you feel? Yeah, it's like, do you feel like you might be premature, or you just don't know how to get more customers?" They're like, "Well, I guess I don't know how to get more customers." Like, that's a problem that's solvable. So let's solve that, right? And so then we can break it down. There's a million ways to get customers. So I can break that down too if you
Yeah,
want.
is there a certain type of business or industry that you gravitate to
Yeah,
for
100%.
the acquisition? And what is
Yeah. So we work with business services, consumer services, ideally businesses that are e-learning, course, like I love licensing models. So I love,
low overhead?
yeah,
low
high
cost of
cash.
goods,
Yeah, exactly.
high margin.
Yep. And the problems that those companies typically have, and we take them on usually between 3 and 10 million is when we, like in top line sales is when we start working with them. The problems that they usually have is that it's too founder led, it's too personality brand driven. They don't have enough customer lifetime value, as in they sell something one time and they can't get people to keep buying, they can't get people to stick, they have high churn. But they typically have high cash flow, but it's very dependent on usually 1 or maybe 2 channels of acquisition. And so we will kind of lay out our 5-year plan to getting them from basically a company that has almost no value to getting to like 30 to 50, maybe $100 million in enterprise value. And a company that has multiple acquisition streams, has an extended LTV. The LTV allows us to have all these different acquisition channels, but it depends on the order in which we solve them depends on the business.
Yeah. What'd you have to pay for the domain acquisition.com? Was it expensive?
Yeah, it was $400,000.
Okay, not that bad actually.
Yeah, I know. I looked at marketing.com, it was 5.6 million.
Okay.
I thought about that. I told Layla, I'd send her a proposal. I never email. I don't email. I don't check email. If anyone ever emails me, I won't read it. So just letting you know. And I literally sent a proposal. I was like, so I was thinking. So I price anchored with marketing.com. And then I was like, we could also get acquisition.com, which is $400,000. She was like, well, that seems much more reasonable because I anchored 5.6. But
That was smart.
But marketing.com, I still sometimes think about because I do like that. I like that domain. But the thing is the reason I ended up doing acquisition wasn't even for the money. It was because the type of people and portfolio companies that I am looking for use the word acquisition. Mm-hmm. Like people who don't know business, not don't know, but like everyone knows what the word marketing means or thinks they know what the word marketing
Right.
means.
It's a little bit more general.
Right. People who are trying to scale their companies talk about cost of acquisition. And so it also had the double entendre of we, acquire minority, stakes in the companies in addition to helping with acquisition. Yeah. So I kind of like that component too.
Yeah, $400,000. I mean, it seems like a steal because I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, Zuckerberg bought FB.com for like $8 million or something like that. Great deal. Just like probably also a great deal. Yeah. In retrospect, yeah. Yeah. My interpretation is there's 2 paths. There's direct marketing or direct response. Advertising, and then there's branding. And I think I've heard you say that you're more, if you were 80-20 advertising or direct marketing before, you are now flipped the script and you're more into branding. Why did you do that, and why do you think that's better now? It's because you're more established, you have the money in the bank, you've done the business?
I think that having the money in the bank enables more branding.
Right.
And so I actually think that branding is a higher return on advertising over a longer time horizon.
Me too.
And so it just takes longer to come to fruition. And if you are patient and have money, it's by far the superior strategy.
Right.
But when you don't have money, you need to make money today to pay for your advertising in general, whatever those efforts are to make known. Than having a direct response. So I think people do end up shifting over time from, like Seth Godin is famous for being a hardcore direct response marketer and then being all about branding now. Gary Vee was more direct response. Yeah. Built the wine library on PPC from Google is more about branding, and I feel like I've made a similar transition. But I think you have to it's almost like you have to discover it yourself rather than be told it. Like it has to become real for you, and then it has to click. And so for me, I feel like branding has clicked in terms of my understanding of its value overall. It is more difficult to measure, but it is absolutely, like when you look at Louis Vuitton and Bernard Arnault, who's the owner, right? He's worth 150 billion or whatever it is now. He's the only one who's not a tech guy who's at the top of that list, and it's because he's built a brand. He's able to sell a purse that cost him $100 for $8,000,
right?
Simply because of a brand, and that's like, so what is his return on advertising? Probably higher than people who are at the hardcore direct response. Funnel, upsell, downsell, blah, 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 like just, buy 2 purses for one off, like that's direct response. Whereas it could just, branding could just be a picture of LeBron with a Louis Vuitton handbag or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, so your opinion, you're right, aligned with what I've heard from everyone else. And I had this conversation with Seth.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said a lot of good things. He said, well, I said that direct response is sort of like the tortoise and the hare. Like, so it's the hare's race is the advertising or the direct response. And you're right. Sometimes you need to fill the funnel because you got to keep the lights on, or you're bleeding out $3,000 a day, and you got to get those leads that convert to sales. And then if you can do branding, it's like the tortoise's race, slow and steady, but it ends up winning the race. And he said, if you want to know whether or not you have a brand or not, people will pay a premium for a brand. Yes. And he said, if you go into most hotels and you don't look at the marquees, look at the carpet around the walls, if you don't know where you are, you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't taste it, then you don't have a brand, you have a logo. Mm-hmm. And a brand is, he used the example of Nike in this story. He goes, if Nike built a hotel, you could kind of imagine what that might look like, or smell like, or feel like. And the same goes for our personal brands, but our personal brands too, right? If we're building empires like Gary is, you can imagine what Gary's, next thing could look like, or Alex's next thing is probably going to have, sleeves cut off, so there's room for the arms to grow, or at least legs. Are you a leg guy?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it. It's not about the destination. No. It's all about the journey. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot it hang from the rear view.